Hello world! Today we'll be building this text-to-speech program using Java and the JavaFX framework. In this program, the user is able to enter text in this text area and then choose their settings like the voice, the rate of the voice, and the volume level. And then once we hit play, we should hear a sound.
Hello world.
Nice. So I'll leave the code in the GitHub below, but I recommend that you follow along so that it can help you understand the logic. Without further ado, let's begin. Also, if you're interested in improving your skills and knowledge in software engineering concepts while building projects, check out today's sponsor, CodeCrafters. With CodeCrafters, you can learn by deconstructing popular developer tools and recreating them from scratch. For example, if you're looking to master Java, you can try to build your own Redis course. Not only do you hone your Java skills, but you can also strengthen your networking and systems programming knowledge. And when you are done, you can add these projects to your resume to stand out more. You can get started today by using my affiliate link in the description. They are offering a free tier and 40% off discount on any of their paid membership plans. Thanks to CodeCrafters for supporting the channel. Alright, so first we're going to set up the project. So we're going to launch IntelliJ and select new project. Then select JavaFX on the left side. Next we're going to name this project text-to-speech GUI. Then for the language, select Java. And then we select Maven. And then click on next. And don't worry about these for now, we'll just click on create. When we create a new JavaFX project, it will automatically generate some files for us. The ones that we care about for now will be located under the source folder named Hello Application and Hello Controller. But before that, let's load in our Maven project. So when you select the Maven option in the beginning, when you're setting up the project, it will notify you to load up the Maven configurations. And usually it shows up in the bottom right, but in this case I missed it, so we could just click on this notification icon here, then select the load Maven project option. So we'll wait for Maven to set up for a bit, and when it's done, you should see this little M icon here on the right side of our IDE. Before we can run our JavaFX project, we will first need to install the required libraries. You will need the JavaFX library downloaded and set up already. If not, you can check out the quick tutorial on how to download and set up JavaFX in IntelliJ by clicking on the annotation on the top right or in the description below. Alright, to set up JavaFX in our project, we will need to go to our project structure, click on Global Libraries and select the JavaFX library. Then right click it and then select the Add to Modules option. Select OK. Then hit apply at the bottom and then select OK. Now we can finally run our JavaFX program. So right now we are using fxml for the GUI, but for this video we're going to set up our GUI through objects similar to how we create Swing GUIs. So next we're going to be building this GUI. First we're going to rename the class name to text-to-speech GUI just to be a bit more specific. To do this, we could just refactor the name so that the file name also changes too. Then we hit enter. As you can see here, the file name also changes, which is important. For the controller, we're just going to remove all the code for now. Then we're going to rename it to text-to-speech controller. Since we aren't going to be using fxml to build the GUI, we can just delete this line of code. We are going to modularize the code so that it will create the GUI in a method called createScene. The method will return a scene object, so we can replace this with the createScene method call. The scene that is returned will contain all of our GUI components. Now let's start building our scene. VBox is a container that we will use to store in our components. It will store them in a single vertical column, hence the V for vertical in VBox. Next, we'll add the text-to-speech label. To make sure that the label will be visible in our GUI, we will need to add it to our VBox, which will be added to the scene. To create a scene object, it will take in 3 parameters: a pane, which is our VBox, a width value, and a height value. Here we will make a static constant variable app width and app height, which will represent the initial width and height of our scene. So here, our initial size of our GUI will have a width of 375 pixels and a height of 475 pixels. Alright, let's look at our GUI so far. So here we can see the GUI starts off with its initial size, and then you can also see the text-to-speech label. So next, we're going to change this header text to something more appropriate. And to do that, we're going to change the hello string here into text-to-speech app. Alright, now let's check out the header. As you can see here, the text of our header changed to text-to-speech app. Here we're going to make the size of the label to be of max size. And the main reason is that later we will be centering the position, so making it max size will make it stay in the center no matter how big we make the GUI. And I'll show you a comparison later so you'll know what I mean. So now we'll center its position. Alright, let's load up our GUI and see what updates happened. So now the text-to-speech label is centered. So let's see what happens when we start to change the size of our GUI. Alright, so when we start to change the size of the GUI, you can see that the label itself will always be in the center. So now let's apply the same width as our GUI instead of the max value. So see how it doesn't adjust to the center when we resize the GUI. So for now, we're going to leave it as max value. Also note that we will be doing this for the other components later on as well. So now we'll be adding some CSS styling to our components. We are going to create a style sheet in our resource folder, which will contain all of the CSS classes that we will apply to our components. We will call the style sheet style.css. In our style sheet, we will first create a CSS class for the scene. We will call this class body, and it will change the background to this color. Before we can apply our CSS class, we first need to reference the style sheet. To do that, we will enter this line of code, which adds our style sheet to the scene that we are currently working on. Make sure to create the CSS file under the resource folder, or else it won't be able to find the style sheet. So now we'll apply the body CSS class to our VBox. So when we load up the GUI, the background should change the color that we provided. Sweet. Next, we're going to style the text-to-speech label. So let's head over to our CSS file again. We are then going to create a CSS class called text-to-speech label. First, we're going to change the font size to 25 pixels. Then we're going to make it bold. And lastly, we'll add some padding of about 10 pixels around the label. This is basically just going to apply some space around the text. So let's apply this new class to our text-to-speech label. Let's go ahead and launch our GUI again. Nice, so now the text-to-speech label looks better. So next, we're going to be adding the text area that will take in the user's input, which will be converted to speech. Here, we're going to make it a global variable because later on, we will need to access the contents of the text area outside of the create scene method. So first, we're just going to initialize the text area object, and then we'll just quickly add it to the VBox just to see how it looks. And the main reason why we choose text area is because it can show us multi-line text, which is helpful for the user to see all of their message at once. So we're going to set the wrap style to true, which means that any text that passes the current width of the text area will automatically be moved to the next line. I'll quickly demonstrate that now. So once the text reaches the end of the text area, it will be moved to the next line. Now we're going to style the text area. So let's head over to the CSS file. Text area will be the name of the class. First, we're going to make the font size 16 pixels. Then we're going to apply a background color for the text area, and it'll be this color here. And that's it. So let's check out the new updates. As we can see, the background color has changed and that the text is now bigger. Alright, so next we're going to apply some margin to the text area so that it isn't touching the sides of the GUI. Unfortunately, we can't just use a style called FX margin because it doesn't exist. So instead, we're going to have to simulate it by storing our text area into a container and then add padding to it. For the container, we'll be using stack pane, which will store in the text area. So then we're going to add padding of 15 pixels on both the left and right sides of the container. Now we just make sure to add the text area into this container. And then also add the container to the VBox instead of the text area itself. Alright, let's check it out. So take note of the text area and how it now has these two spaces on the left and right. It'll still have these spaces even if we resize the GUI. Now we're just going to be adding the settings, which is going to be choosing the voice, the rate, and the volume. We will be using grid pane to organize the settings components. A grid pane allows us to organize the nested components in a grid-like structure like this. Create setting components method is a method that will return us a complete grid pane object with all of our setting components. Alright, let's create that method now. First, we will create the grid pane that we will be returning. Next, we'll be creating the voice label, then the rate label, and lastly, the volume label. And we're going to be adding them to the grid pane. When we add to the grid pane, we have to pass in the component, the column value, and the row value. So now we're just going to return the grid pane object. Then we also have to add our grid pane to our VBox. Let's see how this looks so far. We can see the three labels here. They currently don't look good, so let's style them. We'll head back to our CSS file, and then we're going to create a class called setting label. First, we're going to change the font size to 16 pixels, and then we're going to bold the text. So let's head back to the text-to-speech GUI file. Now let's add the style class to our labels. Alright, let's see how they look now. A slight improvement, but the words are a bit too close. So let's add a gap between them. Here we're going to be adding a horizontal gap of 10 pixels between each component of the grid. As we can see here, there is now proper spacing between each label. Also, there could be a bit of spacing at the top as well, so let's go ahead and do that now. So we'll be adding padding to the grid pane of 10 pixels at the top. That looks pretty good. And lastly, we're going to center the grid pane. So here we're going to be entering the line of code that will center our grid pane to the GUI. Nice. Next, we'll be adding the drop-down menus for each corresponding setting. We'll be using combo box to do this. Here we'll be making them into global variables as we'll need to access them in the createScene method. When we declare a combo box, we also have to define the type that it will store. In this case, it will be of string type. So now we're just going to instantiate each combo box. First is voices, which will store all of the voices available. Next, we have rates, which will store in the speed rates of our speech. So basically how fast you want the voice to be. Lastly, we'll have volumes, which will store in the different volume levels of the voice. Alright, let's add them to the grid pane. Alright, let's check out how the GUI looks now. Now there are 3 drop-down menus corresponding to their label above. There are no values yet, as we'll be adding this later on. Next, we're going to style our combo boxes. So let's head over back to our style sheet. We will create a new class called Setting Combo Box. We will make the font size 16 pixels, then give it a background color and a drop-down background color to this color. So let's add this class to the combo boxes. So now our combo boxes are colored as well as their cells when you click on the drop-down button. Notice how the labels aren't centered in their combo boxes. Let's go ahead and fix that now. To do that, we'll call on the setHalignment method from the grid pane class, where we can align the component to be in the center of its corresponding cell. Nice. So we are finally done with the settings UI. Lastly, we'll add in the speak button. This means going back to the createScene method. And under the line where we create our settings, we will create the button. So we're getting this error because we haven't created the method yet. So let's do that now. First, we will be making a button object with the text speak. Here we center the button similar to how we did it for the text-to-speech label, where it always stays centered no matter how much we resize the GUI. Next, we'll be creating an image view object that will create an image component to which we will add to the button. It will take in an image object and we will need to pass in a resource path to the image. Right now, we don't have this image in our project yet, so let's go ahead and download that now. You'll have to go to my Google Drive to download the image, and I'll leave a link to it in the description below. So you're going to double click on the image, then click on the download button. Save it somewhere you'll remember. Once it's done, we'll be adding it to our resource folder. Now locate the file again. Once you find it, right click it and then select copy. Then we're going to paste this directly to our resources folder. So you're going to right click this folder and then select paste. Click OK. And that's it. So now we can access the image directly into our code. Here we're just going to adjust the width and height of our image. We'll make it have a dimension of 50 by 50 pixels. Now we're going to set the image to our button. Lastly, we'll be returning this button back to the method caller. Next, we'll be adding it to our VBox. So let's take a look at the GUI now. Cool, so we can see the button here, and we can also see the speak image here. Now let's style the button to make it more cohesive with the rest of the design. We'll go back to our style sheet, and then we're going to create a new class called speak button. First, we're going to increase its font size to 18 pixels. Then we're going to make the text bolded, then give it a background color, then change the font color to white. Lastly, we'll remove any padding that is currently on the button. Let's go back and add the style class to our speak button. Alright, now let's take a look at the GUI again. Looks a bit better, but the width is kinda too big, so we're going to add some spacing like we did with the text area. So we're going to add the speak button into a container and then add padding to the container to reach the same result we got with the text area. So we're also going to be using stack pane for the container. Then we're going to provide a padding of 40 pixels at the top and 20 pixels for the left and right sides. And then we're going to add the speak button to the container. And then instead of adding the button to the VBox, it'll be this container. Now let's take a look. Oh yeah, that's way better. But right now there's an issue where if we click on the button, it doesn't look like you're clicking it. To fix this issue, we can style when the button is being pressed. So let's head back to the style sheet for one last time. Here we'll be using the same class name as the speak button and add in a colon pressed at the end. How this works is that when the button is pressed, whatever style we add here will be implemented to the button. You'll see what I mean in a second. In our case, we will just make the opacity decrease to help indicate that the button has been pressed. Alright, let's check it out now. So when we click on the button, the visibility decreases, which helps indicate that the button has been pressed. Now it's time to work for the backend code. So we will head to our controller class. This controller class will handle the backend functionality of our GUI. Before we continue, we will be adding the FreeTTS dependency in the POM.xml file. FreeTTS is an open source speech synthesis system that converts text into spoken audio. To add the dependency, we'll first go to the dependencies section, and we will be pasting the dependency here. I'll leave the code snippet in the description below so you can just copy instead of having to type all of it in. Every time we make changes to this file, we'll need to refresh Maven. And to do that, we can click on this button here. This button only appears if we've made changes to the file. Once Maven has been refreshed, the button will disappear to indicate that it was successful. Let's head back to our controller class. Actually, before we continue, we also need to update our module info to include the FreeTTS library. Then we're going to enter this line of code, which will add in the classes from the FreeTTS library. Now we can go back to our controller. The first thing we'll do is retrieve all of the voices that FreeTTS has. To do that, we'll make a Voice Manager object. Voice Manager is a class in the FreeTTS library that manages voices for speech synthesis, allowing users to select and use different voices for the text-to-speech conversion. We're going to create a static method called getVoices. It will return the list of voices as string values. Here we will need to add the Kevin voice to the voices list. This part is crucial as FreeTTS.voices is empty, so we need to add voices for it to work properly. Next, we'll be creating a list called voices. Then we create a for each loop to iterate through the available voices in our Voice Manager object, then add them to the list. Then we return the voices list. The idea here is that we will be calling these methods to populate the combo boxes from our GUI. For example, we will be populating the voices combo box with the getVoices method. So let's head over to the createSettingComponents method. For our voices combo box, we'll be calling on the getVoices method and adding all of those values to it. Then we will make it have a default value, which will be the first choice if possible. Let's see how this looks. Oh, well, the value is there, but the text's color is making it hard to see. So actually, this will be the last time we go to the style sheet. To change the text color within the combo box, we need to access the cell directly. To do that, we'll be entering two class names where one is going to be the setting combo box and next to it will be list cell. And we'll be making the text color white so that the text is more visible. So let's try that again. Nice, so now we can see the different options in our voices combo box. But we still need to get the rates and volume levels, so let's head back to the controller class. We will create a new method called getSpeedRates. First, we will create an array list called speedRates. This will be the list that we will be returning. Here we're going to manually type in the different rates ourselves. The value corresponds to the speed labeled in the comments next to it. Then we'll be returning the speed rates list. Let's head back and supply the rates combo box with these values. We'll also be adding a default value. Now let's take a look. Sweet, so all of the rates that we added are showing up to the combo box. Next we'll be adding the values for the volume level combo box. So let's head back to the controller. We'll be creating another method called getVolumeLevels. First, we're going to initialize the returning list. So the volume levels go from 0 to 10, where 0 is mute and 10 being the loudest. Here we created a for loop that iterates from 0 to 10 inclusively, and we will be storing the value of I to the volume level list. Then we're going to return this list. So let's head back and supply the volume combo box with these values. And we also give it a default value. Alright, let's take a look at the GUI again. Cool, so now we can select the volume level of the speech. Lastly, we'll be implementing the text-to-speech feature. So once again, let's head back to the controller. We will be creating a method called speak. It will take in 4 parameters. Message will be the text to be converted to speech. Voice type will be the voice to be used. Rate will be how fast the voice will talk. And volume will be how loud or quiet the voice will be. First, we will create a voice object that will store the type of voice. We will get the voice by calling on the getVoice method from the voice manager object and passing in the voice type from the parameter. Here we will attempt to catch an error. If the voice cannot be found, then we will want to terminate the program. Then we allocate resources for the voice. Next, we set the rate of the voice depending on the rate parameter. Then we set the volume level based on the volume parameter. And then we make the voice speak out the message. Lastly, we free up the voice's resource. Now we will call this method only when the speak button's been pressed. So we will need to add an event listener to our speak button. We will use the setOnAction method to apply an action when the button has been clicked. Then we override the handle method, and any code here will be executed when the button's been clicked. Next, we will be retrieving the values from the text area and the setting combo boxes. And lastly, we'll be calling on the speak method where we pass these values as the parameters. Now let's check it out. So we're going to enter some text, then change the settings for a bit, then hit speak.
Hello
Nice.
world.
So if you made it this far, congratulations for sticking through. Leave a like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel and motivates me to keep making more content.
Hello world.
Again, if you're interested in the philosophy of learning as you're building, check out CodeCrafters by using my affiliate link in the description. Also, if you're interested in doing more Java projects, check out my channel as I have tons of tutorials that might catch your interest. Thanks again for the support, and I'll see you guys in my next video.